All right, hello and welcome everyone to a Grendel builds refresh. Been a bit since we have talked about Grendel, but of course due to Arcane persistence, there's some new stuff with him. Kind of a redo of really his whole build, just due to the things that persistence is enabling for Grendel, which I'm very excited to talk about. Before we get into that, let's talk about the shards. The shards are, thankfully, nice but very unnecessary for this build. First and foremost, the most important, one of the shards I have on here is a 225 armor shard. So you'll notice we're just over that 1400 threshold that I like to be over for persistence to make it so that we're totally ignoring heat procs and their armor reduction on us at all times. That being said, this is 225 armor. Every enemy that's in your stomach gives you 250 armor. So if you think that you can maintain one guy in your stomach for, the usual cases where you will be surrounded by Jade Eximus or whatnot, you really don't need this. Is it convenient and it gives me some assurances that I am going to be immune to that stuff? Yeah, it's nice. But it is by no means necessary. Grendel will get a lot of passive armor. And there's going to be a few other ways to gain armor that we're going to talk about as different build options you can go with. Otherwise, I'm on 2 energy max shards for these other 2 blues. These are really nice. I like having the extra buffer of max energy to utilize. This can, of course, be compensated for with some stuff in the build that we're going to talk about. But I do like having it in this configuration. 400 energy is plenty. We don't really need much more than that, though more than that is always, of course, going to be nice. And these other 2 shards are actually leftovers. This is a ability duration that is from a previous build of Grendel. It's still very nice. The extra duration on Nourish and on, Regurgitates, Gastro, and all that stuff is all convenient. It gives us a little bit of a drain reduction on Pulverize, but totally unnecessary just in here because there's no real reason to remove it. I don't have something I need to put in here. And then also, due to the new way that I'm managing the energy economy, this Equilibrium shard is just like, it's not bad. It's giving me energy from the health orbs that I would otherwise be picking up. But not really adding a lot to the build. These are just holdovers from previous Grendel iterations. So weirdly, the blues are more important than the reds and the purples in this build, which is a strange feeling to be sure. With that though, let's talk about the build. And first and foremost, we're going to get it out of the way. Yeah, it's a full Umbral build. Most of the persistence builds are going to be that, but you will be immediately happy to know that, as you can see, this is a 3 Forma build, and 2 of those Forma are Umbral Forma. And you'll also note that I have 7 additional capacity already, so if you want to put this entire build in with no Umbral Forma, you just don't run the Catapult augment, which is a nice utility augment for getting around really quickly, but is by no means necessary. And I just have 16 extra capacity here to spend on these 2 Umbral mods, meaning that this is a 1 Forma build by some godforsaken miracle. But I do really like Catapult. If you are not a Catapult enjoyer, I know that, Pulverize is a subsumed over ability by many who just don't enjoy that aspect of Grendel. I will note that that is going to make using persistence harder because the energy regeneration, health regeneration, which is kind of effectively energy regeneration with our Hunter Adrenaline, is going to be a big part of this. The 378 health a second is very nice for your constant regeneration up to full health while persistence is on, but you can get away without that because Nourish also has a big heal attached to it, healing you for over half your life at this amount of strength. Anyway, but I do personally really like Catapult, and I am personally a huge fan of Pulverize and utilizing it in mission. With that, utilizing Pulverize and really everything we're doing in this build, we're on as much range as we can get minus Cunning Drift, 265% range, and we are on Gastro. Gastro loves the range. We're using Regurgitate as our main DPS output in this build, and it works very, very well. One of the things that is super notable in this build is I am using Stand United. Now, that might come as a very weird mod to be in here because it's plus 25% armor. Well, what are we doing with this? This is pushing me over the threshold on that 1400 armor. Now, the reason why this isn't something else, because they'll be of course there has to be something better. Not really for Grendel is the thing that I have kind of come to. Growing power, because we're in our ball most of the time, is usually not going to be active, and the strength is not really a big bonus that we care about a whole lot. Dreamer's Bond, I guess, is a thing, but the health regen doesn't matter, and the energy regen's not on while we're in Pulverize. Energy regen from Energy Siphon, also not on while we're in Pulverize. Crow's Projection, longtime staple. Grendel removes armor from every single enemy in his vicinity because he's moving, So this does nothing. Really, all of like the usual suspects don't really do anything here. You could run Physique for another 200 health, I guess, but I personally find that getting this breakpoint just using my aura instead of needing to use like another shard for it or anything like that has been better than really any of my other options. Rejuvenation doesn't do anything. Like the amps steel charge, we're not a melee build. If you were a melee build, you could consider that. Like the most appeal here is probably Summoner's Wrath. But if you were going to go Summoner's Wrath and if you were going to be companion focused, I probably would be more interested in going like for the mecha set. There's not a whole lot of auras that are going to help out this version of Grendel very much, so Stand United actually very strangely makes the cut for like the first time ever, I think. Speaking of not needing strength, though, you'll see that I am on Bellicose. Now, I have Bellicose in here to show that, hey, of course, because I have so much health, yeah, Bellicose is going to add a significant amount of strength. If you don't care that much about the Nourish bonus or the Nourish heal, and let me be clear, if you are removing Pulverize, you do care about the Nourish heal. That's going to be way more important, and you're going to want that strength. But if you don't care about that as much, there are actually a lot of options in this slot that can kind of solve various problems for Grendel. First and foremost is like kind of the obvious one. Throw Battery in. Those 2 energy shards I have, like this will shoot us straight up to 834 energy, which is tons. Obviously, even with that, we're going to get even more from consuming enemies. Because we're going to get that 250 armor for every enemy that's in our stomachs. We're going to have a really, really big buffer of energy max most of the time. So that is a big consideration here to be able to just have a ton of energy with Battery. That's a great option to run here. Other things in here, obviously, any of the kind of very generic things that you want to run, like just your damage improvements, if you need like a specific weapon synergy or anything like that, those are all fine and good. And that's all fine. One of the weird ones that I think actually makes a case for once is Arcane Circumvent. This is new, but it does work fairly well on Grendel because Grendel has one specific major weakness, and that major weakness is his abilities don't really work on Eximus very well because Eximus have a ton of Overguard. But Circumvent lets you roll through enemies to steal 50% of their defenses for yourself, which includes Overguard. If you roll through an enemy twice, they don't have Overguard anymore, and they also don't have armor. Zooping up their armor is kind of nothing, because Grendel already does that, but having a way that is not attached to any of your weapons to combat enemies with a bunch of Overguard, and giving it to yourself, certainly not bad, is actually, I think, pretty good. Now, do I wish that roll through enemies included Pulverize in the rolling? You sure bet I do. That would instantaneously fix most of Grendel's problems if Pulverize was considered to be rolling, which, considering you literally turn into a ball and are rolling, God, I wish DE made that change. I think Circumvent makes a good case for itself here if you do not have a weapon that you're going to be using to remove the Overguard from Eximus. If you're stuck in an ETA with a bunch of dogshit weapons in Grendel, this might be something that you're going to want to consider just to make it so that Eximus of literally any level, you can just get rid of their Overguard, eat them, and then start using them as ammo from your gut. So yeah, that's a big consideration here. It's just Arcane Circumvent. I probably am just going to run this for like our test whenever we're showing it in the Kuva Fortress and everything, just because I think that it is an interesting option and it's not really that great most other times. The additional armor, also notably from this, can make up for the lack of the other blue shard. So if you are down that, like, just rolling through some enemies every once in a while is going to give you that additional armor, and most enemies you're going to be encountering that are not going to fold instantly to your presence are going to be armored ones. So there's likely going to be one around that can give you 100 armor from their vast arsenal of it. So yeah, that's what's going on with Grendel. Notably, because I know people are going to ask, I am using the Coda Base Assist. It's just on this. It's a bulwark variant of the build. I have enough armor to make that work, so we make that work. It's otherwise like just pretty normal stuff, just like the normal semi that we'd usually use Deadhead with. But bulwark lets us get that bonus right off the rip, which is quite nice for removing Overguard. With that, the main reason I'm using the Coda Base Assist is that it's, number one, good at shooting Eximus, but number two, that is what is giving us this like chomp reticle, which is of course thematically very appropriate for Grendel. So I can't pass up the opportunity to do that. In terms of the enemies here, they don't really, they don't super rate. We get to turn on Nourish, spit out our 4. They don't have armor, and they're just like, dying in the gas clouds basically from us just spitting some enemies out and getting that, scaling damage and the gas murder death everywhere business. But yeah, and then, you know, you're hitting your 2 and like slowly consuming the enemies in your stomach. They are just bullets for you to utilize because they, you know, their damage scales off what their health is, and they are never going to get any armor whenever they're in your presence. And obviously, normally what you want to be doing with this is, in addition to just, you know, consuming the enemies and all that business, you want to be in your 3, which is, of course, going to let you still use your 4 while you're in it, and your 1 becomes like an AoE that you can just roll into enemies and do, and just like start spitting enemies and leaving gas clouds everywhere, and just getting it going. This will also notably break boxes and stuff, so you can use this on missions where you do want to like farm box materials and things, and just like plow through some exterminates and whatnot that way. And it has been quite useful. It is it's Grendel. Being able to take, you know, as little damage as we do take now, I will kind of like let the enemies, well, do what they can to me. Just like, you know, eat some enemies, jump into your 3, and then just like, you know, let them do what they can, I guess. I've got my Sentinel here who's going to be making short work of them, though. They're, you know, yeah, I mean, it's going to be tough for them. Even if I just like sit here as a big old meatball, it's going to be, I mean, wow, a grenade. It's definitely not just going to max out my energy. Wow. Yeah, so like we're just like, you know, hanging out, just like constantly healing. Really, like our Sentinel can take care of this. We're so survivable this way. And of course, if you use your 2 at all, you heal for like half your life. It's very hard to take you down. And getting the consistent scaling damage is going to mean that the vast majority of enemies that you're going to encounter are going to be murdered quite swiftly. It is also a thing to consider. As enemy levels get higher, your abilities will actually eventually start to get better because of how much health the enemies are going to have. And abilities that kind of scale that way, such as like Zaku's guns are another good example. Kind of whenever you start to get into those really stupid high levels, enemies actually get less tough because you are armor stripping them with your just presence. Plus, they have more health with which you can utilize to kill them with your 4. Which is kind of an interesting just bell curve of difficulty that occurs for Warframes that scale like Grendel does. But yeah, that's going to be what's up. Let's jump into the Kuva Fortress and bounce around. All right, jumping into Tav. Tav, always a good time. Has been a consistent, good testing ground for like a reasonable level to expect from Warframes, I think. Which I think has like just continued to work out pretty well. I know like there's like, you know, we kind of messed around with some other places to test builds and such, but I think that Tav is a good place for it. I think that it is just like worked out very well. Like enemies here being resistant to heat, which is going to be used in a lot of cases and such like that. I think it all really just comes together to make a lot of sense to be testing builds here. Enemies are also like very reasonable groups. There's not any like highly specialized enemies. It's like a nice, I think it's a nice baseline for a good Steel Path experience. Like it's also not going to like, you know, disproportionately show like, you know, oh, Warframe has one major weakness, but the place that we test in happens to have it. I don't really think that super exists here. It's also a tile set with a lot of variety. I've talked about this in the past, I think, but like, hey, here's that variety that I'm just literally just about to mention. Having big, wide rooms open like this that are like usually going to be in any given spawn of the tile lets Warframes that like want to utilize an environment like this. It lets them utilize that while still also having like the more compact hallways that we're going to see in a lot of tile sets as well, which is like this area where we started. And kind of no matter like what space a Warframe needs, the tiles are really varied enough to support whatever you like really want to be doing, which is good. You can see I'm running low on energy here. But here's this nice friendly neighborhood Eximus for me. If you could just like, you know, slam me real good. There we go. Love being max energy. Thanks for that, Jim. Much appreciate our nice friendly neighborhood Blitz Eximus to just max out on energy there real quickly as I was just rooting around, not looking at my energy, just like spitting enemies everywhere. Though that is a very good example of like, hey, if you're like not paying attention to your energy at all, you can sometimes run low and then like need the Jade Eximus to top you off real quick like this, which is all well and good. Also, notably right there, I did have 2 enemies in my stomach, so even though I did not have that extra shard that I have, I'd be just fine. But you can see here, one of the things that is occurring here, this is one of the reasons I bring Nautilus. Nautilus with the Verglass is very good at just like shredding a lot of your more like normal level Overguard. So for most levels of play, you can actually really rely on your companion to rip that Overguard off of a given Eximus. With the companions, obviously, they do have stances that like make them focus on overguarded enemies, which is something you probably would want to look into doing. But yeah, that's like, you know, in general, you'll have an enemy that's like, oh, this Eximus is just not very vulnerable to this. But the moment you remove their armor, you can just eat them. And Eximus actually make delicious, tasty ammunition because they do have those higher health totals. It means that they will actually produce much larger, more explosive AoEs whenever you spit them out into groups and make all your poison clouds. So you do kind of want to eat them whenever they're available. Whenever they're on the menu, you know, this, that, and the other pun. There's got to be some upper limit to the amount of food puns you can make about Eximus, right? Like something, delicacy, something, you know, rarity, and this extinct beast. We could get there. We could. Let's get every permutation of Eximus food pun that we can. That sounds like a really good use of our time. I just like, even if I just like hang out here for a moment, just let them shoot me a little bit. They're not very good at it, but you know, they're doing what they can. So you can see if I just use my 4, you can get through the Overguard, but like it's not great. Overguard is very resistant to specifically what Grendel is up to, and you don't get to eat Eximi. I actually think that if Grendel could eat Eximus, like if that was just like a baseline thing that he could do, like if there was an augment that just said, like, lets his 1 eat Eximus, it probably would make the build. I probably would remove Augur Reach for it right away, especially if it had any other benefit. Because that is like the #1 thing stopping Grendel in the vast majority of cases, is that it can be very inconvenient, the ways that he has to deal with Eximi. And giving me anything that makes it so that is no longer the case, and you can just, you know, ball out and just do what you want to do, would be highly preferable. As for our acolytes here, they're usually not like, you know, they're not a huge problem or anything, but your 4 just, you know, you have like limited damage that you can do to them because they have like the limited status and such, which is normally going to be gas and toxin procs that you're putting on them. So because of that, they are going to die a little bit slower, but most of them can't really do anything about you. And of course, you always have that opportunity to, you know, simply shoot them. Ah, there we are. We should still pay attention, I guess. The knockdowns are brutal when I'm not in my 3. Yeah, nice dead acolyte for us anyway, though. We're at 5 minutes. We're just like 600 kills or so. This build does like a lot of its damage very passively. Like it might not really look like I'm getting like, you know, it doesn't really look like I am killing that many enemies. But the gas clouds and stuff that you do leave behind do like, you know, significant kills on their own. The AoE does go through walls. It's part of why it's so important to have good range on this build. I think that the addition of the extra range that I did end up putting on here over the course of like testing the build was probably the biggest contributor to me getting like considerably higher KPM. Just being able to affect more enemies turns out is good. I know, weird, very weird concept. Definitely not one that we talk about all the time. You can see that Eximus there, just getting taken out pretty quickly. Yeah, Nautilus helps very considerably with this. You could also do you don't have to do Nautilus because you do burn a lot of energy in this build. One of the things that's actually very good is if you roll a Death Cube setup, a Death Cube that uses the Verglass, and then you do a Dupe Cube where you just do the Duplex Bond. You'll get a bunch of just Death Cubes rooting around with lasers, and because most of the regular enemies are either going to be eaten or be dying in poison gas, that gives you a wonderful opportunity to just have all the Death Cubes flying around with Verglasses burning the Eximi to the ground. Like in this case, like they're the only ones that are like here, and then whenever their Overguard gets removed, they just get to be consumed and turned into ammo. which is very, very convenient. Yeah, also, this is like just such an enjoyable build. Like, I personally am just like a tremendous fan of just Grendel overall. Because like the ball mode is just so enjoyable. This is like my go-to for bringing to like, you know, the weekly Netracell and such like that, where it's like you just roll this through the area, you break all the boxes, break all the containers, get 1,000,000 energy, and just like, you know, bounce to the terminals. And then once you get to like actual Netracell part, first and foremost, you don't care about any of the modifiers because like you have a bazillion trillion health and in like infinite regen, and like those enemies aren't really high enough level to really be a threat to you, and that's before persistence. So it's really quite a good thing indeed. Obviously you can see there, like if you do need to do anything with guns, the like bulwark coda and such like that is kind of really good, it turns out. Also, the Eximus, you can see if they don't have Overguard, they do kind of just die. Sometimes, like even if you're not seeing the Eximus, they will just be dying passively to your stuff that you're just shooting off in this, that, or the other direction. But yeah, in terms of persistent survival, the thing I would definitely say about it is the three I think is pretty important. You might want to use my previous Grendel build if you are one of the people that really hates his 3. Because I know there are Grendel 3 haters out there, but the regeneration from his 3 is a lot of what is going to enable a build like this to be like what it wants to be, which is just like constantly bouncing around, constantly leaving AoEs, and just, you know, zooming around quick as can be. We're in another situation where, there we go, I need to get shot real quick. Make sure I keep up Nourish and do all that good business, then just pop all these enemies dead. Magnetic procs obviously are a potential danger because you do have kind of the free slot though where I have Circumvent though. If you're ever entering like, you know, a situation where it's like, oh, the magnetic procs always kill me, like if you for whatever reason wanted to take Grendel into like, you know, an endless cascade mission, for example, you would consider probably, you know, running the magnetic immunity Arcane in that slot instead. That's definitely something that would be on my mind in that particular case. But yeah, in general though, we can just... Oh, no, this is Mania, so Mania doesn't like it whenever you shoot him. We can just passively get rid of Mania then. There we go. Yeah, Mania, the old deflection of all projectiles. Still doing it? There he goes. Yeah, infinite projectile deflection is a hell of a drug. Not a big deal though. Yeah, 10 minutes. We're at just over 1,000 kills. About just almost 1,100 there. That's usually the low end actually of like what I've had. It might just be the tile that I chose to hang out in this time. But you know, 100 KPM is usually like what we are looking for, just in general. Yeah, it's good stuff. Ball is life. We love rolling. Yeah, bouncing around through tile sets, breaking all the boxes, eating enemies, spitting them out, making, you know, big murder clouds. It's a good time. Grendel is a Warframe that I enjoy quite a lot, and Persistence definitely feels like it helps with their survivability, especially to not be so annoying, because it being the right thing for Grendel to start shield gating once enemy levels got high enough just felt so bad. But yeah, that's Grendel. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed the video. I'll see you tomorrow. All right, a new year is here, and we actually have some new patrons to thank. Thank you very, very much all for supporting the channel, especially the $10 patrons: Athean, Eighth, Alex Parnham, Arbiter Daydream, Baby Hoot, Barkus, Inuvan, Blotomatic, Brutus Salazar, Cano Lathra, Clob World 3, Dylan Dworsky, Ithrain, James Harsthorn, JC4 Science, Josh, Nightcar 1981, Lord Ian, Luzanth, Matt Holt, Mike Kiesman, Mikukel, Michta, Nerve, One Man Wolf Pack, Ruby, S267, Sanyu, Season, Sharp247, Snap the Mag, The Coupon of Death, Waifu Wars, Wodet01, Seraphir, and Zero Weaves Plan. Thank you all very much. And of course, thank you to all of my $5 and $2 patrons as well. Your support is much appreciated. We should be getting a ton of new build stuff out, because there is a lot of new things that came out in December and many things to test and figure out.